I want to tell you something that I have not said out loud very many times, and definitely not in a public capacity, but I have always known that I was meant for big stages. Not because I think I'm special in the way that sounds arrogant, but because there has been something in me for as long as I can remember that knows that the room that I'm standing in is not the room that I was built for, that there is more, that the stages I've stood on so far are small compared to what I believe God has planned. And for a long time, I was ashamed of that knowing because who actually says that? Who walks around believing that about themselves when their life is hard, their bank account is low, and they're a single mom figuring it out one day at a time? Believe me, I am very nervous sharing this and being this bold, but I also know that God has called me to be bold and to not be afraid to share, be afraid to declare, or be afraid to dream. But regardless of my personal situation, the knowing has never left. Through everything, it was still there. And today I want to talk about the dream that you have never said out loud either, and what I believe God does with the desire you are too afraid to name. The dream did not leave when everything fell apart. It was still there under the bankruptcy, broken marriage, broken relationship, starting all over again at 40, all the hard seasons and the moments where I genuinely had no idea how the next month was going to work. It was still there. And I've learned that that kind of persistence is not delusion, it is not arrogance, and it is not wishful thinking. That is God refusing to let you forget what he put you here to do. That desire will not leave you alone despite every season it should have. That is not a distraction from your faith. That is the thing your faith is for. To be honest, it feels very scary to say any of that out loud or what I'm about to share today. And something I have, I think, struggled with as well is grappling with the desire I feel God's placed, knowing if it's of Him, knowing if I hear His voice. But God has taken me on like several adventures, we'll call them, of learning to hear his voice and like being guided step by step. So even if I look back to when my marriage was ending, I remember we were separated at this point, and I remember God giving me direction: turn left here, go right here. There often wasn't like a result in obeying when I would get these nudges, and I often felt like I was absolutely crazy, not gonna lie. One time, even I was driving, turn left, turn right, blah, 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 go to Tim Hortons and get a donut. Your girl doesn't eat donuts. I was like, what? This went on for months, and I was so confused as to what was happening, but I knew in my spirit that all I could do was obey. And so I would obey these random little inklings that I would get inside. What I didn't know is it would lead me to what I'm about to share, but it was also training ground for me to learn how to hear God's voice in even the smallest, most insignificant things. And it also helped me to learn how to have discernment in making decisions. Have I always listened to it? No. Have I made mistakes? Yes. But during this specific season, what it led me to was discovering that my ex-husband was actually having an affair and was already with somebody else, and was lying about it. All these turns led to being at his place at the right time and seeing him with another woman. And I was a little bit wrecked, obviously, in the moment, but I was like, it was almost like God's way of saying, see, I got you. I will protect you. Everything that's in darkness will come to light. Keep trusting me step by step. And so when I say I've learned how to walk by faith and to trust God in every step, it literally has been my training ground the last decade and a half. And has probably been the most powerful thing as I make decisions. And again, I haven't always made them correctly. I haven't always listened. If I'm really honest, even when we had went through the process of buying this house that I ended up being in a lawsuit against because our lender pulled out, I had that nudge. Girl, don't do this. This one's not for you. This one's not for you. Even going into the bank to get the deposit check, I had that nudge and I was like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And I should have listened. And now I recognize it sooner and can make decisions knowing that I know that that was not the decision that I should do, regardless of what it is, because it can apply to so many different things, whether they're big decisions or not. So even as things have fallen apart, I've been able to hear God's voice. So when I feel like I have this dream or this vision that God has given me, I know that it's from Him and it's not of me. And I know that it's not about me, but it is still really bold to say out loud because people are like, sorry, what? People don't actually say these things out loud. But I know that you have things in your mind and your heart of what you think you're supposed to do, what you're called to, what your purpose is, making decisions on next steps, all of those things. And you have that nudging, but it's really hard to identify it sometimes. So I'm stepping out in boldness to share mine. So in hopes that you can share yours. But oftentimes I have thought, is this a selfish thing? Is this just like a fleshly desire? And for so often, there's a scripture verse that I would hear. And when I was young in my faith, and my faith wasn't as developed as it is now, and I grew up in the church, so I would hear things all the time, obviously. But Psalm 37:4, okay? Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Now, how I used to read that was, what I want, I will get. God will make it happen. He is my genie. That is not the case. And as I have spent more time with him and my intimacy has grown with him, my relationship has grown. I've watched him make changes. I've watched him make a way there where there seemed like no way. All of those things. My desires in life have drastically shifted, and I would say are more aligned with what his desires are. And I really believe that when we delight ourselves in God, he gives us the desires of our heart, but his desires are placed upon our heart, which then become our desires. So, young Sarah wanted a big, loud, flashy life. That's the mature Sarah. That's not what she wants. I actually want a slow, intentional, soft life where I'm living out my purpose, which requires a few things to do so. And his desires have become my desires. My desires have entirely shifted from what I used to want and what I want now. So when I think of the direction that I believe God's calling me to go, the vision that he's placed on my heart, I know that it's of him. I don't see it in fruition yet right now. I don't know when and if I don't know when that will happen, but I'm trusting that that's what he's guiding me towards. And instead of thinking I have to instantly get there, I know he's taking me on a journey to get there, and I'm going to continue to learn things through this process that will help me in that season rather than resenting the season that I'm currently in, which I've done a lot in my life. I would say also that that verse is often read as a transaction. Delight yourself in God, he will give you what you want, right? But the deeper meaning and reading of it is that when you are truly delighted in God, your desires are shaped by him. It's a more eloquent way of saying it. The things that you want become the things that he wants for you, which means that those desires that I've had, that you've had, that have stayed through every season, regardless of what's going on, they're worth paying attention to because he put them there. And if I'm honest, part of the reason I've never said out loud the things that I envision is because there's a bit of shame associated with holy ambition. And when you want big things, it's about you and you want fame. And I would say, if I'm really being honest, in a previous season, that's what I was chasing because I thought that it would make me feel valuable. And then I learned that my value was in him, and everything shifted and changed. And the desires that I have and the vision that I have has entirely shifted. And I know it's about him and bringing glory to him. And really, my heartbeat, my greatest desire, aside from raising Brooklyn to be the most wonderful woman she can possibly be and walk in her purpose, is to help other women do the same and to be able to share what God has taught me in hopes that it might help others as well, because I know how hard this journey can be. And our challenging seasons can be really hard, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and God will continue to make a way, even when it seems like there's no way. And I think we've been taught that if we want big things, it's prideful. I think that humility is often confused with smallness. And so we show up small and feel like we can't want big things because of that. Also, the fear of actually saying it out loud is really a fear of being accountable to it or being mocked for it. So yeah, do I think I might be mocked for the things that I say and the things that I desire in this life that I dream of? Yep, that's a fear, which is why I have to declare the things that I desire and why you do too. I think also we see the life that we're living now and how big and massive the gap is to where we want to be or where we desire, where we feel God has called us to be. And it seems so large that it seems impossible. The gap feels like evidence that it's not real. And I look back even to 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, living in my mom's basement, having no job, running a business while being a mom full time, running on empty in survival mode, to what life looks like now. It's entirely different. And I know I talk about it a lot, but if you understood the magnitude of the despair I was living in versus thriving now, that's one piece, but then also having a good job, having a steady income, having a space for Brooklyn to go to school and be educated and build her to all she's supposed to be, to actually having a home, how we got the home, how I can record the podcast in the home that I got. All of those things, like, they're such massive shifts. So when I look back, I know that's evidence actually of what God can do when I surrender. And I refer back to it so that it's also evidence for you with whatever your gap is between where you are, where you want to go, to show you that God can make that way, even when it seems impossible and where it seems like there's no way. Because literally, there seemed like there was no way. Like $250,000 in debt, being sued for $500,000, like all the things, right? Rebuilding life at 40, solo parenting, all of it. And yet here we are and we're thriving. Not everything is figuring out. I'm still becoming, I'm still evolving into who God has called me to be. The dream is not fulfilled, but like already that's a huge shift. So I know that there's more in store. I know that this is not it. So let me ask you, what is a dream that you have that you've not actually said out loud? And I'm not talking about the safe one, the thing that you passively say that feels nice wrapped in a little bow, the real one. The one that's in the back that you very rarely bring to the front. The one that sounds too big when you're saying it and feels really scary. What I want you to do for the rest of this episode is to hold that in your mind. You don't even have to say it out loud yet. Just hold that in your mind. And we're going to look at it together and unpack some things. Okay. Because I'm in the practice of going first, I am going to share some of my big audacious dreams with you. It feels very, 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 very scary to be this vulnerable. But if I can be vulnerable with you, you can be vulnerable with you. Okay? That's my hope. So for me, I have had this vision of being on big stages, speaking, running events, not for the sake of being on the stage. It really has nothing to do with being on the stage. It has everything to do with a message I believe God has given me and helped me walk through, because I know how heavy the pain is when you hate yourself. Like, absolutely hate yourself. The only thing I ever liked was my hair growing up. I was bullied heavily. My identity was rocked from a very young age. And I have watched God transform me, body, soul, and spirit, when I learned to love myself, one, and I spent a decade preaching that. But most importantly, learning how much God loved me and how much that transformed me and overhauled how I operated, how I moved in this world, the decisions that I made, and speaking up for myself, deciding what I wanted as opposed to what other people wanted for me. So even when I was in rock bottom in my mom's basement, this dream has not let go of being able to have big events and host them and have women leave changed, knowing how much God loves them and wants for them, and for them to figure out what their dreams are and their desires and their purpose. It's not about me. It's about being God's hands and feet on earth to help women figure that out for themselves as well, and to have that intimacy with the Father that I have experienced because I know how life-changing it is. Another piece for me is financial freedom. Being in a bankruptcy, not what I wanted for my life. I was working full-time my last year in high school for my dad as a bookkeeper, also working almost full-time hours at Rona as a cashier. I have worked really hard in my career. Most jobs I've been at, being promoted multiple times, working my way up. I grew up as an entrepreneur's kid, so I think very strategically. My mind is wired very differently, and I love strategy. So to be in a financial fight has been very, very challenging, and it's not what I envision for my life. I envision having to not worry about living paycheck to paycheck. I envision being able to buy a home. When I envision buying a home, I want Brooklyn to actually have a door on her room. Right now, she has a curtain. I'm very grateful for our space, and I will never be ungrateful for us being able to live in this home. But I want her to have a space that she gets to curate how she wants. She keeps talking about how she wants rainbows and glitter on her wall, and she wants to have a bunk bed and have a play place in her room. I want to have a spare room so that when my mom comes, she doesn't have to sleep on this couch because there's nowhere else to sleep. I want a space that's beautiful that she can have an oasis when she comes to visit us. I want to have my office, not in my bedroom. I would like to have an office that has a studio that I don't have to set up and down in my main living area. And then I would love to have a gym in my home that I can escape to. Going to a gym is not an option having Brooklyn, and not much support during the week. So having a gym in my home works and I love it. And then she grows up seeing me take care of myself. And that's such an important piece to it as well. Having a saltwater pool in the backyard for Brooklyn because she loves being in the water, and so do I, and so does my mom, and having this beautiful oasis for us in our backyard. Like, these are the things that I envision for us. And if I'm honest, one of the things that I've had to battle is I'm gonna be 43 this year. I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm rebuilding late. There are other things I desire, like oh, this one's hard. I didn't think I was gonna cry, but it's emotional. I want a husband. I want to find my person. I want somebody who thinks I'm amazing, who knows I'm amazing, and doesn't think I'm too much and yet not enough. I want somebody who is purpose aligned, somebody who's living in his own purpose, who knows how important purpose is, somebody to cheer me on, somebody I can cheer on, somebody to be a leader in the home, guide our home in godly ways. I desire that so deeply. I don't know what that looks like, and that feels scary to say out loud, but it's something that I very much desire. And I've often fought with the, but I'm too old, it's too late. And I was actually at an event earlier this year. It was called She Bears Fruit, and I was given a prophetic word. I was at the front. I had gone up to surrender just my current season in life. And it was before I knew I wasn't supposed to launch the podcast or start planning it until after this event and another event had happened. And basically, Symphony walked up to me. She was preaching and she said to me, "It's not too late." Because that's what I keep telling myself. It's all too late. It's too late in the game. I'm not going to find my person. I'm not going to have the life that I want, which are lies. And she said, "It's not too late. God will do it." And it is, for me, is twofold. It's the kingdom marriage that I envision, and it's my kingdom purpose. Those are the two things for me that are like very heavy and that weigh heavy on my spirit. And then I laughed when she said it. And I actually used to be criticized for my nervous laugh, but she also called out how much it was like Sarah in the Bible, where God gave Sarah a promise in the Bible that she would have children in her old age, like in her 90s, and she laughed at God. And what do you know? God did it. And then God named the baby after the laugh. So, because God is so intentional with names, right? But I've also watched me be very much like Sarah in life, where God gave me a promise and then I tried to manufacture it like she did with a baby. I tried to manufacture what my purpose was. I tried to manufacture without realizing. It's not like I intentionally went out and ahead and did that, but that's essentially what happened. And so having to say, like, I messed up in the past, but God will use it and trust him for that, but also say these are the things that I want, like, that's really heavy. So here I have playing my dreams out to you. Specific dreams are the way God can deliver. And I've watched him do this before, even when it came to as I was writing up my dreams after a previous healing journey. So after my healing journey, after my divorce, I went through this whole journey of like, what is it that I actually want? My mom challenged me, get out of survival mode, start dreaming again. What is it? Actually, just recognizing that again, like usually after significant healing time is that time to dream again, right? And so that's the stage that I'm in again. And I watched God help me be a personal trainer. I wanted to be a Zumba instructor back then, so it looked a little bit different. Plus size modeling. I erased that 3 times before it stayed on my board. Then it happened. The detail is not greed. It's faith with a floor plan, which is really cute to say. But if you don't know where you want to go, how are you going to go? You can't move into a vague vision. I know what I want. I know what I want the house to look like. Yes, I have journaled it all. I know what the stage feels like. I know what the life I am building toward actually contains and feels like. And I used to be ashamed of how specific it was. Like wanting it that clearly was somehow asking for too much and I didn't deserve it. I'll share another time as well where I wrote out my dreams of what I desired as well. I think I've shared this before too. But when I was living in my mom's basement, God called me to start dreaming again about what I wanted for Brooklyn and I. So I actually envisioned a condo. I wrote that it would be white and gray with lots of windows and natural bright light, which is exactly what this place is. It came fully furnished. Everything was white, gray with pops of purple, some teal, came with everything. But I gave the specific details, white and gray. Literally, my walls are gray. They look a little like beige because of my lighting. They're gray. My baseboards are white. Everything else is white and gray. I've added some pink color and pop, but I was very specific in what I wanted. I also wrote out a huge prayer board asking God for things, clearing my debt away. I also wanted out of my fitness business because I no longer felt aligned in it. There are some very specific details that I put on that prayer board that God has answered very specifically in ways that only He could. Even finding daycare for Brooklyn. The entire time I lived with my mom, she sat on a wait list in a tiny little town. I was back in Toronto 6 days and she had a daycare spot, like almost unheard of in the Toronto area. But I was very specific about the things that I wanted, even the job that I had. What I do, what I get paid, all of those things literally got answered those specific details. So it's happened multiple times. So here I am again in this other season, coming through this healing journey and realizing it's time to walk forward in what God has for me next and allowing myself to dream. And if I'm very honest, it was only in the last week that I actually allowed myself to pick up a fresh new journal for the year to start dreaming. And I started dreaming on house, job, career, purpose, all related, stuff for Brooklyn, this future husband of mine. I created categories and I went into details. What do I want it to look like? What do I want it to feel like? All of those things. So I want to help you do the same thing so that you can start dreaming about what it is for your future and dream boldly and audaciously. There are 3 things I want you to do with your dream. 1, I want you to name it specifically. So write it down. What is the dream? You can do what I did where it's in different areas that you have different dreams. Or if you just have one, start with one, write it out, write it down somewhere where you can refer back to it. All of it, all the details, the house, the relationship, the financial number, the school, education, whatever it is for you, get very specific. Don't just write the name of it, go into detail. Like I've written down colors I want the house to be like, what I want, all of that. Vague dreams stay vague, so don't be vague. 2, I want you to honor the season that you're currently in. You might be in a preparation season. The preparation season looks like faithfulness in the small. So it may feel like small little things, but being faithful in this season is really important as well. Every space that you're in is preparation for the next step, the next season, the next level up, the next increase. And honoring it is really important. And that's something I did wrong for a lot of time. I hated and resented the difficult seasons and had no idea how to navigate through them. And part of what I had to learn was emotional regulation, but was also how to honor those seasons and trust that, like, okay, this really sucks, but it's going to be okay. And I'm going to learn something through this. What am I supposed to learn in this season? A really great example of an unexpected one where I chose to like honor the season was after I'd moved to Toronto. I had got a new job. I was there 3 months. I had my like probation. And in my review, my boss was like, you are likely going to be our top performer on the team. You're doing phenomenal, et cetera, et cetera. That was the vibe. A week and a half later, I was let go with half the company. And I was like, God, why? What happened? I allowed myself that one day to like cry, let it out, get it out, grieve it, to process it. Cause I've talked about that, grieving the letting go process. And then I decided I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to trust God. I'm going to start applying for jobs. I'm going to trust that there's some sort of lesson in this and there's some sort of purpose. Well, fast forward a few weeks later, 6 weeks later, to be exact, I started at Riverside. And for me, Riverside was like a perfect marriage of things. It was the work that I was used to, customer success manager in tech. And it was now in content creation, which is what I've been doing for 15 years. And so it was like the perfect marriage of my skills, my strengths, and what I enjoy. And it made so much more sense. It was more money. And I was referred to this role by the boss that I had just had in this new workplace. So somebody I had just met and had only known for 3 months. So everything had its purpose and led me to where I am now. But if I was angry and I resented and I didn't honor that season, what fruit could have come from that, right? So that's where I say it's really important to like honor that season or the season that you're in and recognize that there's purpose in it and somehow, and that God literally uses everything and he can turn anything around and make beauty for ashes, like he says in Isaiah. 3rd, now this is probably the hardest, is to hold it open-handed. Okay. The dream is yours to carry, but it's not yours to control. I am one who likes control and to make a plan and to execute, but you want to hold it tightly enough to keep it moving forward, but loosely enough to let God shape it to something better than you even imagined. And again, I've watched him do it time and time again. Once I finally like, okay, this is the dream. I'm going to admit that I have the dream, but I'm not going to control all the situations, all the details, even the podcast. I knew I wanted to do a podcast from time. And I just knew it wasn't the right time. And so when I felt like it was about time, so timeline, November of 2025, I felt, okay, I think the podcast is supposed to happen. God was like, doing this podcast, you have to let me open the doors for you instead of you opening the doors for you. Do you know how hard that was to sit down and say, okay, you're right, God. I have pushed open the doors, opened the second fitness studio. I found a rental space. I didn't ask God what he thought. I just moved full steam ahead. And it was so, so hard because that's not what God had for me. Did he use it? Did he bring opportunities? Yeah, really cool ones. But I was trying to control every situation and I was so frustrated and it nearly destroyed me. So I'm not holding on to try and control. I want God to lead. And God has opened door after door after door, and ideas have started to come when it was his timing. Fast forward, the podcast ended up launching in Valentine's Day, February. So not long after, but God was very intentional through my process. You can pick the name. That is it for your birthday. So you can plan for this photo shoot. That was it. Because somebody gave me an opportunity to do the branding photo shoot. I've shared this before. Then it was another opportunity at work in relation to branding. Oh, cool. So like things are starting to move. And I was told, do not start planning any of the details of the podcast until after the seminar I mentioned, the She Bears Fruit. And then there's a prayer board workshop. There was some work that God wanted to do on my heart in those 2 sessions that were very significant that I was then in a place to start planning. I was 3 weeks building the podcast before it launched, but I knew that God was in it. And so even on days that it's hard and it may not have what I thought it would, and God keeps reminding me, but I'm orchestrating your steps. I'm orchestrating your steps. I'm opening the door. This is not you. And that's what I needed because want all the glory to be brought to him, not to me. It has nothing to do with me. And my hope in sharing some of the experiences that you can understand even in your own journey and recognize when God is talking, where he's leading, how to take one step at a time, and how to remain faithful when you feel unfinished and you're like, but I'm supposed to look polished. You can still have a joyful life in this in-between season. And this dreaming aspect is a really, really big part of it. Allowing yourself to dream, giving yourself permission to dream, allowing you to get it out in detail, and not being afraid to actually express what you want. Another scripture to land on is Philippians 1:6. Being mindful of this as God starts something is he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. He began it, not you. He began it, not me. And he will be faithful to bring it to completion. And I think it's really important to remember that he placed the dream and it's not something that's manufactured, that he gave you desire and it's not invented. It's not in your head. You're not crazy. He's planted something on your heart. And it means that the one who gave it to you is responsible for completing it. And all your job is not to force it, not to earn it, or make yourself worthy of it. Your job is to be faithful in this season and trust that the one who started the work will be faithful to finish it. And that's a whole nother trust level, right? The dream you have never said out loud is not too big. It's not too audacious. It's just been waiting for you to stop apologizing for it. So today I want you to do something that might feel completely uncomfortable. I want you to say it out loud right now in your car or your kitchen, out for your walk, or wherever you're listening to this. Say the thing that you've been carrying and that has been on your heart, the specific version, not the safe one. Say it like you already believe it and know that it's on its way. Because if God put it in you and it has survived everything you've been through, it is not going anywhere. The dream is not the problem. Your permission to hold it fully is. I'm Sarah Taylor. This is the Becoming Podcast, Faithful and Unfinished. Now go say the thing out loud, and I'll see you next week.